recording is on. I'm opening the floodgates.
Can you all see my screen?
You're up, Sarah. Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. All right, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here right at 12 noon. Perfect. Welcome to the FCAC's member ownership of our electric cooperative webinar as part of the Fairbanks Earth Week. Y'all should see our schedule of events up here on the screen. We're getting down to the end of the week. We've got this membership this afternoon from 12 to 1, or this webinar this afternoon from 12 to 1, and then a webinar hosted by the Alaska Center coming up from 4 to 6 this evening, if you'd like to tune into that as well. And then tomorrow, our last event in this virtual Fairbanks Earth Week schedule is a virtual March for the Earth from 11 to 11:30. So we would encourage y'all to to register and sign in to the Zoom meeting for the virtual March for the Earth with a sign in support of the Earth. And Ryan Marsh and Richie Music are going to be leading that event. And I did not introduce myself. I'm Sarah Clement. I'm the program director for Green Star of Interior Alaska, and Green Star and Northern Alaska Environmental Center, Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition, and the Alaska Peace Center, along with a large group of community volunteers, have been working since October to put all of these events on. So huge shout out to all of those folks. And just wanted to point out that if you're interested in learning more about the events coming up later this afternoon and tomorrow, we do have a Facebook page and a website listed here on our schedule. And I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors, Mount McKinley Bank, GVEA, and ABR Inc. and the Woodway for helping us put on all of these events. So I'm going to turn it over to Phil and Kathy in just a moment here. Just some administrivia items. If you have questions while the webinar is going on, feel free to put them in the chat or message them to me directly. And then once Phil and Kathy are done with their presentation, we'll moderate and take a few questions if we have time. And the recording of this video will be available in a few days on YouTube. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Phil and Kathy.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate that introduction. And as Kathy pulls up our presentation here, I just want to do a land acknowledgement before we begin our presentation. And so I want to acknowledge that we work throughout the unceded territories of the indigenous peoples of Alaska. We're on the traditional territories of the Lower Tanana Dene people. And we acknowledge the ancestral and present land stewardship of the people of these territories. And so it's wonderful to see so many of you guys here, a lot of friends and familiar faces here, so that's wonderful. And get started with our presentation, More Power Than We Know, which is all about our electric cooperative and our member ownership in it. And just to start, I'll introduce myself. My name is Phil White. I'm the renewable energy campaigner for the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition. I also work with the Northern Alaska Center as well as Native Movement. I also have my good friend Kathy Walling here with me.
Well, hello everybody. Yes, my name's Kathy Walling, and I'm kind of serving as one of the co-coordinators for the Renewable Energy Working Group of Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition. And I sort of have to chuckle in also acknowledging coming from work as a pediatric physical therapist for decades now. in that sense of the surprise of being uniquely qualified to be stepping into renewable energy co-coordination, and just, put that out there in the spirit of, you never know the places and spaces that we can find ourselves in, and we all have pieces and parts to bring forward to the work that we're being called to do at this time on our planet. From that work, and serving as co-coordinator, and also the work within Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition, and that being seen more and more around the state and even being recognized nationally in different cases. Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition was invited to participate in a National Energy Democracy Summit this summer, and I was fortunate to be able to be representing FCAC in that capacity. And this first piece here, let's see, as I'm working on my, is really a piece to help kind of guide, steward, and ground us in the work that we're doing within the working group, really focusing on energy democracy and how we move ourselves forward. And this gives some more input of what's also happening just even beyond Fairbanks and our place in the larger picture.
I feel very hopeful and honored to be here connecting with individuals all across the nation that have been doing phenomenal work pushing the envelope around energy democracy.
Energy democracy is not only the ability, but the necessity to determine the use of energy, which is a microcosm of a community determining their own destiny.
Energy democracy for people of color really is about empowerment, understanding how deeply we've been disempowered.
Energy system, as it currently stands, is very destructive to the lives and possibilities of people of color.
Energy democracy is really about the ultimate vision of really what we're trying to get to. The way that we're able to not just talk about the energy system, but the environmental injustice, racial injustice, social injustice that is wrapped up in all of those systems.
People of all ages have come together in this room, from as close as around the corner to as far away as Alaska. We must educate the people. We must pressure the government to do the right thing to make it better for all of our children.
At its core, in the fabric of the DNA of energy democracy, it is people having power.
Great, thank you for that, Kathy. Do you want to keep sharing, or would you like me to share now?
Why don't you go ahead and share at this point?
Sure.
And I will just say, with the experience of attending that summit, I certainly came back appreciating, the added positives in our midst, from a standpoint that many of the other groups that were gathered were really needing to come up against privately owned electric generation companies, private for profit, and hearing all sorts of added challenges that they were having. And I came away all the more grateful that, we here in Fairbanks and along the road system and other places in Alaska, we are member owners of our electric cooperative, and just really heightening my appreciation of that gift in our midst, and how we have opportunities that hopefully this webinar is going to help us to be stepping into more. And with that, I will pass this next piece off to you, Phil.
Yeah, excellent. Can you see the background, Kathy?
I can. There's a little bit at the very top that's shadowed on mine. I don't know if it is on others.
Well, hopefully other folks can see it. So yeah, just thinking about this basic question, what is a cooperative or co-op? And its origins really go back to 1844, and they go back to England, and they go back to folks trying to provision items that they needed themselves in an egalitarian and a democratic fashion, and to do so because the markets or the state were unable or unwilling to do so. And so at their core, cooperatives are non-for-profit organizations. They are democratically owned and controlled, so this member ownership. And so maybe the best way to think about the distinction between a co-op versus a privately held company is, if you think about a normal privately held company or what's called an investor-owned utility, IOU, that's an organization that has shareholders, and the duty of that organization is to provide a profit to its shareholders. And there are times, I think, when this model can work well in terms of innovation and pushing to sell its product, but there are other times when this model is really terrible, and I think we're actually seeing that moment right now. I mean, what just happened? Disney just laid off a bunch of its employees amidst COVID, while giving its CEOs a big bump in money. And I think we can see this right now with the stock market, right? The stock market seems like it's doing all right, all things considered, while we have 25 million people out of a job. So there can be a big disconnect in for-profit companies. But the beautiful thing about co-ops is they exist for the purpose of meeting their members' needs. Again, as this slide says, by the community, for the community. And so when we think about GVEA as an electric utility, the purpose of the organization is for them to provide power at cost for the members and to meet other needs of the community. And so again, there's no shareholders. Our cooperative is not interested in padding the bottom line of folks who do not live in our area or who are not part of our co-op, and that's great. And there's, a co-op is a kind of democratic organization that can provide any kind of service, right? So obviously we have our electric co-op here in town. We have credit unions in town. Credit unions are all co-ops, as well as agricultural co-ops and food co-ops, right? So we have the co-op market here in town, which is a great example of a cooperative. And just a brief history about rural electric co-ops, because even though the idea of co-ops have been around since 1844, when electric power first got started in the United States, it was a private for-profit enterprise from Edison's first coal-fired power plant in New York City. And the problem was that even though these private companies would electrify the major cities because there was enough demand there, they didn't have to string that many wires, but all of the folks out in the countryside in the rural areas were totally neglected as part of that model. And so what happened is the Great Depression provided an opportunity for the government and for interested parties to redress that market failure. And I would underscore that term, market failures. Electric co-ops emerged to provide services that private businesses would not and could not deliver. And so during the New Deal, there's the Rural Electrification Act, and you had all of these cooperatives proliferate throughout the country. And I think it's really important to note that the U.S. government was providing a lot of loans and technical support, and that fundamentally the people on the ground, even though a co-op is a democratic ownership structure, the folks in these co-ops were mostly white landowning men, right? So there is you can have a democratic structure and still have those built-in inequalities. And I would underscore this for GVEA: there is always opportunity to be more democratic and to be more egalitarian and to keep striving for your goals and principles. And Kathy's going to talk about those principles here in a moment. But just the brief history of our local electric cooperative, GVEA, it was incorporated just after World War II in 1946, and it was, aimed at bringing electricity to the rural areas, the agricultural industry just outside of town. Fairbanks had electrical providers here in town, but again, it was those folks who outside of town who were not being supported. And there's a couple great quotes that I want to share. Cliff Hayden, who was one of the original incorporators of GVEA, he told a small meeting of folks near Fairbanks in 1947, quote, "It seems impossible, but let's go for it." And when they first got this organization up and off the ground, it was only about 100 customers that they were providing. So a really kind of, it was an enormous challenge, but Alaskans always had this mentality, which I think we should remember today, which is Alaskans were used to doing the impossible. And the last quote I want to provide here, I think this is especially timely considering our elections that are coming up and our all white and male board of directors that we have. And this is a quote from Mrs. Parks, who is the president of the board of MEA, Matanuska Electric Association. And she said, quote, "Everybody was trying to help the other guy. That's what a cooperative is. It's a bunch of people getting together to solve problems," end quote. And so, as you can see, out of the New Deal, cooperatives have come to power the vast majority of the nation's landmass, even if they don't provide power to the majority of the nation's inhabitants. And you can see the map of Alaska down here in the lower left. Cooperatives are the backbone of our electrical infrastructures, all the way from Utiavik to Unalaska, right? And all the way down. Juneau has a for-profit electrical provider, but otherwise it is our power system, and especially the rail belt, is dominated by co-ops. And so I just want to throw this question out to you all before I hand it over to Kathy, and please feel free to type in the chat box. What are the major energy issues facing our communities? What concerns you most? And then we'll take up these questions in a couple slides. But with that, I will go ahead and hand it on over to Kathy.
Thank you, Phil. So in knowing that we're a cooperative, I actually saw this first in the Rural Light a year or so ago, the 7 cooperative principles. And they're here on the slide: voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, members' economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation among cooperatives, and concern for community. And I came back from that Energy Democracy Summit thinking, wow, how much further will we be if we as member owners really step in to these cooperative principles and really support our cooperative living even more fully into them. Particularly, democratic member control. A piece even today, like, what can we be doing to be helping with the education of our member ownership? And that was part of what was given us juice to be offering this webinar today, because as we learn more, maybe even starting from the beginning of, oh my gosh, if we're paying an electric bill, it has our name on it, our household is a member owner of our cooperative. And as we learn more, it helps us have more agency on how to be moving forward, lifting up our voices and our actions to be supporting our cooperative moving in directions that are important and meaningful for us. And then the last one, here, the concern for the community. Another piece that I really came back with of, who's not currently at the table, whose voices aren't being lifted up right now, who are the folks maybe at the margins of our community, and what can we be doing to be really helping to center them foremost in our efforts and actions as we collectively move forward. Next slide. So what does it mean to be a member owner? I appreciated going on GVEA's website, and here is their mission: recognizing GVEA's importance to the economic, environmental, and social viability of our communities. The Cooperative's mission is to safely provide to member owners with reliable electric service, quality customer service, and innovative energy solutions at fair and reasonable prices. And I can say that innovative energy solutions, how do we collectively move forward in this time of, COVID and climate change, and move the both and forward? Some of the added pieces, again, just emphasizing that we own it collectively, and how then can we be taking that ownership agency forward. A right to attend monthly and board meetings and giving comments and saying what matters to us is certainly one of those pieces. Each household who is a member owner, or, for each household, we get a vote as member owners, and there are elections coming up that really matter. So that is another way, and I'll have a little bit more specifics in a later slide, that we can be taking ownership. And then the item on here about capital credits, it's pretty awesome that because this is not for profit, if GVEA in tending for the collective has money left over from what we have contributed and paying our bills, it comes back to us. And that, that feels like another real positive of us being member owners of our cooperative, versus thinking that we're just paying a bill to a private entity that is then, heading to the shareholders only. So next slide.
Excellent. Thank you, Kathy. And so maybe I'll hand it over to Sarah. I can't see the chat box because I'm sharing this, but I'm just very curious to hear from folks. What energy issues most concern you? What do you care about, especially in reference to our cooperative and energy in our community?
Yeah, everyone, if you have thoughts on that issue or that question, what energy issues most concern you, go ahead and type them in the chat, and I will read them out since Phil can't see them.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. And if you're listening on Facebook Live, you can type them there too.
I never know with this Zoom screen share, right? Can everybody just see my background? Like if I'm looking at other stuff, does it block people's view? I can never figure that out.
We can see there's a bar at the top that's blocking out
Gotcha.
but I think that's related to Zoom. But I think if you opened up another window, we wouldn't be able to see it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Ryan, maybe could you, I'm having a hard time monitoring the chat and the Facebook Live. Could you?
Gotcha. Well, what I see in the chat right now, I posted one answer that I'd like to see us work towards reducing our coal usage and cleaning up our air quality in town. Those are a couple of things, and figuring out how to transition our electrical system here to meet the needs as we transition justly off of fossil fuels moving into the future. And then from Erica Watson on the Facebook Live feed, she says, I'd love to see the Denali Borough get more involved in the co-op. there's so much interest in renewable energy, but we haven't really organized as shareholders.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's a huge opportunity there. I was just talking with some folks down in Cantwell who are really interested in renewable energy and want to see GVEA, you know, moving more aggressively in that direction, and actually, you know, permitting, doing more to permit electric car chargers, especially up and down the Parks Highway. So, yeah, the hunger is out there from people for these reforms.
Yeah. So we've got a couple coming in here. One is Tristan is wondering if we could talk a little bit about the generation that happens in the Denali area, like the status of Usabelli, etc.
Yeah, for sure. So beginning in 1967 was the first coal-fired power plant down in Healy, and that's Healy Unit 1. Then, you know, there was this experimental, quote unquote, clean coal power plant that was brought online by the Department of Energy in the late 90s that never worked properly. But then GVEA purchased it in you know, around 2010 or so, and then tried to bring it online, and that's Healy Unit 2. And so right now there are 2 coal-fired power plants that operate down in Healy, and that's a mine-to-mouth operation, as they call it, where the coal goes right from the mine there in Healy to the power plant, and that power, you know, is sent up here to us, right? We are consuming that. And so I think, you know, down in Healy and Cantwell, you know, there's a fair number of folks down there who rely upon the mine and those power plants for their livelihoods. And then I think there's a lot of folks down there who, you know, who live in those areas because of the natural beauty down there and are hoping to see a transition to more renewable energies. But one of the coolest things about the Healy area is just above Healy, on the ridge there is the Eva Creek wind farm that GVEA built in 2012. And that is the largest operating wind farm in the state of Alaska, 25 megawatts. And recently when some of the Usabelli employees had the option of who was going to maintain that road, that was one of the most sought after jobs. So there seems to be some appetite for local residents to be involved in the energy resources of the future. So it's pretty exciting.
Great. Thanks, Phil. There's a request, Phil, for you to close your chat box just because or move it off to the side. Thank you.
Yep.
So one question that that we got was a comment saying, not sure if this is relevant, but the SNAP program doesn't pay out the wholesale prices. So if more and more people get solar, how do we advocate for getting SNAP with wholesale prices? And maybe we could clarify what you mean by, or just for everybody, SNAP, what that program is.
Yeah, so trying to remember the acronym here. It's the Sustainable Natural Alternatives Program, sustainable, something like that. And this is a program that GVEA set up, I think back in 2005, to help, you know, direct extra money from member owners who are interested in renewable energy sources. If you have solar, if you have any type of renewable energy generation, that money helps go to those members. But part of the problem is that there's you know, many different electricity rates, and one of them is this rate that we all pay for electricity, which is around 24 cents per kilowatt hour right now. But there's also what's called this QF1 rate, and that's the wholesale rate or the avoided cost. And that's only around 9 or 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So part of the issue with this is that if you have a solar array under this original SNAP program, to my understanding, and if I say anything wrong, please correct me here. My understanding is that you are only getting that 9 or 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And so I think there's a lot of folks who feel like there are opportunities for GVEA to be, you know, providing a more competitive rate for the folks who are willing to invest in these solar and other renewable technologies. And I think really what needs to be done there is all the SNAP producers and other folks who are interested in renewable energy should really come together around this and make a very clear, coherent request of GVEA and you know, push that forward and make sure that we can have dialogue with them to make sure that, you know, that request is in GVEA being fiscally healthy and fiscally responsible. But there's no doubt that we need more of those renewable energy installations in the future, and we want to incentivize folks to do the right thing.
Just a quick follow-up question of my own on that. Is that something that, is that request, that formalized request, something that the Solarize Fairbanks campaign is working on?
Not to my knowledge, but I think it's something that could be added into some existing programs. And, you know, as we'll talk about here in a moment, Kathy will talk about, you know, there are monthly GVEA board meetings where any member owner can go and talk. So if folks are interested in that solar reimbursement rate question, I think that's something that, you know, you can go and testify about. And I would say that's something that FCAC's Renewable Energy Group would love to assist with and help organize folks.
Great. The one, we've got one, Lisa posted the website, the link to the Snap page on the chat. So feel free to check that out, folks, if you're interested. And then one more comment is there's an abundance of, quote, cleaner power being generated by other electric cooperatives south of Fairbanks. I'd love to see member owners of those cooperatives organizing and letting their boards of directors know that they support cost-effective sharing of that excess power with GVEA, even if it's more beneficial to GVEA than it is to their cooperative, because we're all in this climate change crisis together.
Absolutely. You want to take that one, Kathy?
I would say that's a yes, yes, yes. And I'm not going to be able to say the actual bill, but I think to that point of recognizing, so, you know, one of the cooperative principles is cooperation among cooperatives. And I think this comment really speaks to the import of that. From Fairbanks down to Homer, there are 4 cooperatives, and you know, I think steps are really moving forward to do more real connection and coordination amongst those cooperatives, you know, to help do what this comment is saying, to help increase economic, what's called economic dispatch, or how to levelize costs and to help move renewables from different parts of the electric grid at different times, because it might be sunny in Fairbanks and cloudy in Homer, and it might be windy, you know, more in Matanuska area. And just as that would help for balancing the different renewables that might be really up or not as up at different times. And really seeing that, I like the last statement in that, because we are all in this climate change crisis together. So how do we, you know, there's a how do we come together as member owners within GVEA, but then how do we come together really up and down the rail belt? And I really, you know, there are real efforts working to be connecting member owners up and down the rail belt and helping to support the connecting of these cooperatives up and down, because we are all in this climate change crisis together. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. I think those are all the questions that we have right now, but if folks have more, then please feel free to type them in the chat or send them to me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kathy. Moving along here. So what are some solutions, you know, continuing the conversation that we just had? And, you know, yeah, I think at the top of this list.
Sorry, Phil, I don't mean to interrupt you, but your screen stopped sharing at some point. So if you have more slides, you'll have to reshare.
Sure. Okay, just give me 1 second here.
And if for some reason it's easier for me to share, Phil, I could try doing that as well.
I got it. The Zoom just, you know, there's always opportunities to learn, right? All right. Let's see. Can you guys see now?
There's still that little gray box. I don't know if there's any way that you can shift.
For some reason, Phil, your Zoom tools all just show up as gray boxes to us. So any Zoom tools you have are blocking out parts of your slide.
Wonderful. Holding back my expletives here. Keep this family friendly. Clean energy, clean words. All right. So can you guys, you can see now and it's not blocking too much?
Yep.
Not blocking too much, yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, like I was saying, what are some solutions? You know, top of the list is, again, greater cooperation with these rail belt utilities, being able to have this economic or environmental dispatch to move energy between South Central and Fairbanks more easily. And there, the bill that Kathy referenced is Senate Bill 123, and that has moved forward, and we are, expecting passage of that. So it's pretty exciting. The other really big, there's a couple other big programs that we could really be doing here. And one of them is this program called on-bill financing. And it's a little technical, but the big picture of that is this is money from the federal government that co-ops can use to invest in member owner households and businesses. And the way that it works is our co-op GVEA would get a 0% interest loan from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and then GVEA loans that out to individuals as part of their normal electric bill, right? So this is all done via your electric bill. This is on-bill financing. And that allows member owners to do things like weatherize their home, do energy efficiency upgrades, install solar panels. And so it's a really tremendous, economic development program that allows us to, invest in our homes and our communities at basically no cost to either GVEA or to homeowners, because when you install those energy efficiency upgrades, the way that it works is they only approve upgrades that will actually keep your bill the same or lower it. So why wouldn't you want to invest this free 0% money in our homes? There are issues there around how to set up that program, but it's a huge opportunity, and it's something we really believe GVEA should be getting on. So, and something like the Solarize program. If you're interested in solar on your home and you don't want to go to a bank and get a 6% loan, and you don't have $10,000 cash lying around, this is such an opportunity for our community to seize this program and to really utilize those millions of federal dollars to invest in economic development in our communities. So the other thing is, a lot of folks, I've heard people say, oh, how can GVEA ever go away from coal power? The sun doesn't shine, the wind's not always blowing up here. And what most folks don't realize is that we have world-class wind resources in Alaska. As the Japan current comes up and over the Alaska range and moves through those mountain passes in Healy and Delta. I mean, for all of us who have been down there, you know what the wind is like, and it can be, it is an absolute force. So that's why Eva Creek is where it is, right above Healy. That's why Alaska Environmental Power is where it is, the 2 megawatt turbines in Delta. And we have enormous opportunity to expand those resources and even to be building out wind energy to be sending south along our transmission line to South Central. The other thing I'll say about solar is, even though we are in interior Alaska, we also have world-class solar resources, better than Anchorage, better than the Kenai Peninsula. And because the price of our electricity is so high, 24 cents per kilowatt hour, it's actually really economical to deploy solar here. Obviously, it's not going to work very well in November, December, and January, but it provides energy all the rest of the months, and especially in the spring when the solar energy reflects off the snow. It's a really tremendous resource, and it's something that, my personal belief is, why are we ever burning any coal or oil in the middle of the summer when we have these tremendous resources up here? There are technical answers to that question, but I would just throw that out there. And then the last thing I would say is battery storage. The ability to better regulate these renewables that we want to bring on the grid. And I think a great example of this is Here in GVEA, we actually have BESS, the Battery Energy Storage System. And at the time, that was the largest battery in the world. So our co-op has a history of innovation, and it has a history of building really world-class renewable energy resources. But what's recently happened is Homer Electric Association has recently signed an agreement with Tesla for a giant battery storage facility in Soldotna, which will enable them to take off one of their natural gas peaker plants, save money, and reduce their carbon emissions. So we could be doing something very similar up here. And with that, I will turn it over to Kathy. Oh, there we
go. What can you do? What can we do? And, you know, I also invite folks to be putting other things in the chat that maybe we don't have up here that you are thinking of, because there definitely is the whole collective of we. And so at least to get us started with that, what we can do, I hope everybody watching on Facebook and listening on Zoom knows that we member owners have many of us have a big opportunity coming up with the GVEA elections. That will be, the ballots go out the 15th and need to be received by the 9th. And so if you live in districts 1, 2, or 3, you have, you know, an important opportunity to be exercising your member ownership and voting. And if you don't know what district you are in, which, you know, I didn't before starting a lot of this, and I have found that I am in really good company with many folks not being aware of what district they're in. You can find it on your bill, and you can also go on to GVEA's website, where they'll have all of the different districts listed. There's visual maps, and there's also verbal descriptions to help you find out which seat you are in. And most people in Fairbanks have a voting opportunity coming up, and we are really hoping that people will be exercising that that opportunity as a member owner. I also just lift up that particularly for District 3, we're aware that there is a added opportunity because it's the first time that this seat has come open. The incumbent is not running. And of the 2 candidates who are running, there is only one that we are seeing as a progressive candidate to be uplifting the messages and values that we have been speaking with on this webinar. So urge you to go and check out, read more, and exercise your voting opportunity. We are still waiting to hear the next ones, ways to be speaking up. Going on GVEA's website this morning, the annual meeting is due to be May 7th. And I think it's not clear on the website whether they are going to do that live streaming or if they're moving it back or whatnot, but it's something to
Kathy,
yeah.
It will be live streamed with questions submitted by email. And we're going to hear more details on how that's going to go down on Monday's monthly board meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, further update info, and, you know, thinking of the annual meeting and hearing more, you know, a next opportunity is that each month GVEA has board meetings. They're usually the 4th Monday of the month. And so we all have an opportunity coming up on Monday, April 27th at 6:30. Since we can't be there in person, there is a number to call in and the access code, and it's up on that slide. And it's an opportunity to tell the board, you know, what is it that you care about and are wanting the, you know, the board and GVEA to be moving forward towards. Different times in going and listen and participating, and what we've heard from some of the board members at different times is they really want to hear what are innovative ideas, innovative solutions. how can we be contributing to be moving us all forward? So it's a rich opportunity. It happens every month, and it's a way that we can be really exercising our member ownership. Would certainly love to put in a plug if this has life and juice for you and you'd like to be helping to uplift the people power and energy democracy. We would love to have you join FCAC's Renewable Energy Working Group. And Phil has put in his email as a way to be stepping into that. We are really looking to be advocating for more energy democracy. How can we be bringing people that are more at the edges and margins of our community and really front and center them as we look to be moving forward at this time on our planet, looking to be encouraging more clean energy, carbon reduction. What is it that is on, I'd say is on your heart and spirit that you want to make sure GVEA knows and the board is hearing as part of our cooperative in moving us forward? We also have down talking with your friends and neighbors. I have been surprised how often anymore I am having conversations with folks who aren't aware that they too are member owners of our electric cooperative. And as we inform and educate, it helps to empower all of us to be stepping more into action. So really want to be encouraging all of us to continue to get more educated on what's happening, getting involved, and particularly the upcoming opportunity to be voting in our upcoming GVEA board elections if you are a member owner in districts 1, 2, and 3. And if you're in a different district, you'll have opportunities in the next years, because every 3 years, each board seat comes up for the election process.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sorry, did you have one more thing, Kathy?
Well, no, I was just thinking it looks like there might be some more from the chat, so maybe I'll hit a pause and give a chance to hear questions or comments from others coming through the chat.
Sure. Yeah, we've got a couple. One comment from Lisa is, my understanding is that the QF1 rate has varied from 9 to 13 cents per kilowatt hour, and while low is much higher than that of other utilities. So she's looking for info to back that up, and she'll share it when she finds it. But she did learn that as of March 1st of this year, the QF1 purchase rate is 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And then we have a question from Allison. Could the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition or the Renewable Energy Working Group specifically create a utility leadership school that would train community members about electric utility issues in order to put forward future board candidates who are better informed and ahead of the curve when they get elected?
That's a great idea, Allison. What do you think, Kathy?
I almost want to be asking this back to Allison as far as asking that, knowing that you have served on the member advisory committee for the last 3 years, I wonder where's maybe the intersection with what's happening there and a utility leadership school, and what might be the interplay of those two things. Because I guess I would like to think that would be a component of the member advisory committee, or if not, what else? Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I guess I'm wondering what is the intersection between FCAC or the Renewable Energy Group and Golden Valley Electric Association, working to be helping to train community members more. Appreciate the comment. It'll be good to chew on more.
Yeah, and she just added a follow-up. I think service on the MAC would be part of the coursework in the MAC. And then Ryan also posted a direct link to the board of directors on the GVEA website, and then in the sidebar on that page is where you can find out descriptions of which district you're in. So you know if you're up for voting this year or not.
You know, another piece I could put in here as far as opportunities available, I just referenced the MAC. And again, I didn't know about this before really stepping more into the Renewable Energy Working Group efforts, but the MAC is the short name for the Member Advisory Committee. And there are opportunities for member owners to serve on that committee. And I believe each district has at least 3 spaces for member owners to step in. And the most recent time I checked that is that there are 2 openings available in the District 3 line, where there's only 1 member owner from District 3 currently serving on the Member Advisory Committee. I think applications are requested through the summer, and any open spaces I think are filled at that time. But it's another opportunity to be learning more about our cooperative, you know, and also being able to really speak more to the different board members of what it is that you are caring about and what you are wanting to see moving forward in our cooperative. So it's definitely another way to be getting more involved and uplifting our people power.
Well said. Thanks so much.
Any last comments or questions from folks? Oh, Allison says, a lot of people consider the MAC to be window dressing for GVEA to make it look like they're involving members. My experience was much different than that. Frustrating, yes, but more rewarding and educational than frustrating. So, plug from Allison. Any other questions or comments from folks, either here on the webinar, or Brian, do we have anything coming in from Facebook Live?
Been watching Facebook Live and I don't see anything new there.
We're good. We did not expect to take a full hour, and I'd say we're right on time.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both, Phil and Kathy, for this presentation. I found it to be very informative and super helpful. I've got a couple of ideas for my next action items personally. Oh, Diane chimed in with a comment, testifying at the board meeting is very possible and easy. They give you 3 minutes and are very welcoming. So plug for everyone who is a GVEA, or for anyone, I think, to testify at the next board meeting or board meetings in the future. Wonderful. Well, with that, this webinar will be posted shortly on YouTube, so you can point all your friends who weren't able to attend to come watch it and get some of their questions answered. And our next webinar is in just a couple hours at 4 p.m., the Climate in the Legislature with the Alaska Center. Bring your afternoon snack to enjoy while learning from Alyssa and Louie, and we will see you all at that point. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You as well.
All righty.